Whiskey 6 Lima Golf.
Whiskey 6 Lima, is it Lima Golf, is that correct?
Hi, I'm Jim, W6LG for Ham Radio Basics. Welcome to my radio room here on Wolf Mountain, where it's about 50 degrees, pouring down rain. We're predicted to get 4 inches of rain today, so it's nasty weather. In the prior episode, we connected an HF station. We hooked up a power supply to a Yaesu FT450. We connected an outside antenna. We hooked up a microphone and a CW key. Pretty much your basic station. Got a few comments about, could you really work the world with it? And sure you can, because it's dependent upon the antenna. So a dipole up in the air, maybe a half wavelength to a full wavelength. You can work all kinds of countries with it, and certainly great distances. 5,000 miles is not a problem. In today's episode, let's continue with connecting the HF station and add a few devices that you typically find in a guy station. Probably the most common device outside of a transceiver and a microphone is an antenna tuner. And although I'm not a big fan of antenna tuners, I know that a lot of guys use them. And in the next episode, I'm going to show you why I'm not a big fan of antenna tuners. For this one, I'm going to use an antenna tuner that's automatic. I could use a manual one, and the manual ones are real easy to tune. Just that mine is connected. I might disconnect my Drake. I've got a Drake and a Nye Viking. Might bring those to the camera, or I'll stick the camera into close-up of those two antenna tuners and show you how they tune. It's real easy. But let's use an automatic one for this. And I've got an LDG. It's a nifty one. It's good for 250 watts. The upper LEDs ramp and show power output, and the bottom scale is SWR. There's a tune button in the middle. There are some switches off to the side for manual tuning or selecting one of two antennas. This one's really neat. It has an antenna switch built in. You can pick antenna number 1 or antenna number 2. The port that's on this side is the in, and the other two are for output. So let's hook up the transceiver. So as you look at an antenna tuner, you've got to figure out which one is the in. And in this case, it's clearly marked. So, and this I'm going to put into port number 1. And on the front of the antenna tuner, I'm going to select antenna jack number 1. So antenna jacks are selected using one of the buttons on the front, and the tune button is in the middle. Now, when this tunes, it's going to make a bunch of noise, and it's going to almost sound like something's wrong, but it really isn't. Okay, I powered up the power supply. I've turned on the transceiver. For push to talk, I've got a microphone. I'm going to set this to RTTY or AM to produce some carrier. If I was on single sideband, there'd be no carrier because it's single sideband suppressed carrier. And then the antenna tuner is, and I'll show you this end for this test, is going to read the frequency and figure out a match in a matter of seconds. So, okay, so I'm going to key the transceiver, and I'll push the button on the front to get the antenna tuner to do its thing. As you can see, the SWR is pretty high. So this is the tune button. I'm going to get this transmitting, let it do its thing, and watch the light bulb too. Okay, so the light bulb's lit up. I think it's showing probably pretty close to 100 watts out. Transceiver's doing, I think, 90 something. So we've transmitted into a 2-to-1 SWR, and the antenna tuner has matched it. Okay, and the wattmeter on the LDG antenna tuner is showing 100 watts. So in theory, we're putting 100 watts into this, and something like 100 watts is going out. Antenna tuners don't have a whole bunch of loss. The next thing that would typically be connected in a station is a wattmeter. So I've disconnected a Drake wattmeter from my station, set it up in here, and we're going to connect it somewhere in the line to the antenna. And where would that be? So here's the wattmeter. In this case, it's an old one. It has a remote head, which makes it real convenient, so I'm not taking RG213 up to the top of the transceiver. And this happens to sit close to the transceiver, so I can watch it. So where do you put it? Do you put it in the line between the transceiver and the antenna tuner, or do you put it in the line from the transceiver to the antenna? Well, if it's here between these two boxes, you're going to see probably a 1-to-1 or darn close to it 1-to-1 SWR. It's not going to tell you a whole bunch. You can put it following the antenna tuner, which will perhaps give you readings that are a little bit fuzzy, but it will give you an idea of what the SWR is like. So let's do it that way. We're going to disconnect the antenna from the back of the antenna tuner, and that's antenna port number 1. Okay, so I've got it hooked up, and let's key it and see what happens. We've got the antenna tuner that's tuned into the antenna. We've connected following this wattmeter. Let's see what it shows for output, and it shows darn near 100 watts. And the light bulb is lighting up. So now we've got a power supply into a transceiver, an HF transceiver, using the proper cable. We've gone from there into an antenna tuner to match impedances. Doesn't really tune antennas. Then through a wattmeter, and then to the antenna. Now, the wattmeter is showing roughly 100 watts out. Just for the fun of it, let's hook this up at the end of the RG8X and see what it shows. And to do that, I'm going to need to put on some glasses. So we're going to move connections around. Okay, it took a few minutes to hook everything up, but I got it connected. So I'm going to just quickly turn this around if I can, if I got room, so you can see what it does. It is showing it's got a 1-to-1 SWR, but if you'll notice, the bulb's not as bright, and the wattmeter is showing about 70 watts. So in the coax, we've lost roughly 30 watts of power in 100 feet of coax. So the most important part of your station is probably the antenna, and number 2 is for sure the feed line. So power supply, transceiver, antenna tuner, wattmeter, you could discuss where to connect it. Lots of choices, but this is one way to do it. And also to show you that the SWR, this is measuring the SWR at these 2 dummy loads that are connected in parallel. I should see a fairly high SWR, and it does. So power is being reflected from the dummy loads back to the source and then back, and it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until it's either dissipated by heat in the coax or until it gets radiated. Once during a contest, I had a pretty high SWR into a 40-meter antenna. It was a DX contest, and I was running 1,000 watts, and I had a really high SWR. And after being on the air for a while, I noticed a smell in the shack. It was the coax. It was getting hot. So yes, you can heat coax, and it becomes really lossy. In the next episode, we're going to connect a couple of watt meters and look what the feedline losses appear to be. Sort of a repeat of what I've done before, but I'm going to do it with a light bulb so we have a little more graphic display of what's going on. So I'll have 2 bird watt meters connected, 100 feet of RG8X, the transceiver, and we'll see what happens. Should be interesting. Thanks for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this. Got a lot of emails on the last episode with good questions, great questions, and other folks have been kind enough to help answer those. Thanks a lot. 73 from Jim, W6LG. If you've enjoyed the video, please subscribe. If you have a question, please post it below. See you the next time. Thanks.